Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going exploring what happens when, like, the Western Zodiac runs right into the Chinese Zodiac.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so specifically we're going to be looking at Taurus, that's from the Western side, meets the Year of the Dog from the Chinese Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And we got some research here all about this combo, and
Ah.
I got to say, some of it's pretty wild, even for me.
Well, I always find it fascinating how these different systems of thought uh, intersect,
Yeah.
and what kind of insights we get from looking at that.
Totally. Now, I know this might sound a little, a little out there for some people, but stick with us,
Yeah.
okay? Because even if you aren't into like astrology personally, I think it's still really interesting, because tons of people actually do consider these things. So it's like even just knowing a little bit about these combos
I know.
can be super insightful. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, that's like another tool for understanding people
Yeah.
and their, motivations and all that.
Totally. All right, so let's just break it down a little bit. Like start by what each of these signs is all about individually. So first up from the Western Zodiac, we got Taurus. I know they're supposed to be like super down to earth, practical folks, but what else is there to what really makes a Taurus tick?
Well, so Taurus is an earth sign. So like you said, that already tells us a lot about them, right? Grounded, practical, and they're also ruled by Venus, which is the planet associated with, well, it's all about love, beauty, pleasure. So, naturally, the Taurus folks tend to have this, like, strong appreciation for the finer things, good food, nice, comfortable surroundings, harmonious relationships, that kind of stuff.
Ah, so it's not just about being practical. They like to actually enjoy life too.
Yeah, exactly. And they
Right.
also put a really high value on stability and security, actually, which, sometimes that can translate into a little bit of a stubborn streak.
Interesting. So maybe not the most spontaneous people then. Like, could you see a Taurus being,
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
like, resistant to a last-minute change of plans or something?
Oh, possibly. But, we got to remember, these are just like tendencies, not hard and fast rules. Every Taurus expresses these traits in their own way.
Right, right, of course. Okay, so that's our Taurus. Now let's jump over to the Chinese Zodiac side and meet the Year of the Dog. So what are we working with here? Like, what are some of their defining characteristics?
Well, in the Chinese zodiac, dogs are known for being very loyal, trustworthy, really strong work ethic, too. They're often seen as like the protectors, the guardians, always looking out for everyone else.
Okay, so basically, these are the friends you want with you in a crisis.
Oh, for sure. They will always have your back, no matter what.
That's great. But I'm also wondering, with that strong, like that protector instinct,
Yeah.
is there like a potential downside? Could it ever be, I don't know, like too much, too controlling maybe, or overprotective?
That's a good question. And it's definitely something to consider. Like any strength taken to an extreme, it can have, a shadow side. But the important thing is balance, right?
Right, right. It's all about nuance.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our our grounded, pleasure-loving Taurus and our loyal, protective dog. So what happens when you put them together? Like, what kind of personality comes out of that mix?
Well, according to what you found, this Taurus dog compo, it's considered like exceptionally trustworthy
Yeah.
and grounded. They're seen as really reliable, steady, and incredibly loyal, almost like those earth sign qualities, but like supercharged,
Wow, so double down on the stability.
Exactly. And this combination is often associated with building things that last, whether it's, a career, a
Yeah.
family, a friend group, whatever. They're in it for the long haul.
Wow, committed. But one of the sources also mentioned this, like this whole protector aspect to this combo too. So does that mean Taurus dogs are
Oh,
like
no.
the ultimate ride or die friends, always there to defend you no matter what?
Oh, they definitely could be. Yeah, their loyalty is huge. It's like one of their most defining characteristics.
Mhm.
Fiercely protective, anyone they care about. And they'll stand up for what they believe in. No problem.
Okay, so I'm starting to get a picture here. This Taurus dog is strong, loyal, reliable, maybe a little stubborn. But we did talk about Taurus having that stubborn streak, and I can't help but wonder if, like, does that get even stronger when you add that
Yeah.
dog's protective nature to the mix? Could it ever be a problem?
It's definitely possible, yeah. Because that unwavering loyalty, it's great, obviously, but it can sometimes make it hard for them to let go of things, even when it's not working anymore. Remember, both Taurus and dog can be a little fixed in their ways.
Right, so maybe they'd be the type to, I don't know, like stick with a project at work,
Yeah.
even if it was clearly going nowhere.
Uh-huh.
Or stay in a relationship way past its expiration date.
Exactly. They can be incredibly resistant to change, especially if it feels like, it's threatening their sense of stability or security.
Yeah, that makes sense. But hey, on the plus side, if a Taurus dog is your friend,
Yeah.
you know they're not going to ditch you the second things get tough.
Oh, absolutely. That loyalty runs deep.
All right, so we've got this image now of the Taurus dog. Loyal, reliable, protective, maybe a tad stubborn. But I'm curious to see, like, how does this actually play out in the real world? Do you think we can see these traits reflected in any famous Taurus dogs?
Oh, absolutely. Your research actually had this whole list of famous people born under this combo, and it's a pretty diverse group, actually, which I think shows that even with these shared astrological influences, there's always room for individual expression.
Right, right. Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah.
The first name that jumps out at me is Cher. She's an icon, obviously. And she's had this amazing career spanning, like, decades. And she's still going strong. Is that Taurus dog energy shining through there?
I think so, yeah. That staying power, the ability to stay relevant and reinvent herself over and over while still, like, maintaining her core self. That definitely speaks to the stability and resilience of the Taurus dog.
That's a good point. Yeah, she doesn't seem to be easily swayed by, like, trends or fads or whatever. She's got her own thing going on.
Right. And think about her loyalty to her fans, too. Like, she's known for defending them and advocating for causes she believes in.
That's true. Okay, now this one surprised me. Andre the Giant is on this list. I wouldn't have pegged him as a Taurus dog.
I know, right? It's interesting, though, because he really embodies that protector aspect we were talking about, but in a totally different way than, like, Cher.
Yeah, he was known for being super strong, obviously,
Oh, no.
and having that, like, imposing presence, but also for being gentle and kind.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid to use his strength to protect people, which I think lines up with that dog energy.
Okay, so maybe the protector side of a Taurus dog isn't always about being, like, gentle and nurturing. It can also be, like, a powerful force you don't want to mess with.
That's a great observation. It reminds us that these combinations are more like a framework, for understanding personality, not a rigid blueprint or anything.
Right, totally. Let's look at one more. Tina Fey, she's obviously super successful, super talented, but she also seems to have this grounded quality about her,
Down to earth.
She does, yeah. And if you look at her career, it's all been built on hard work, consistency, and a clear vision, I think. And those are all very Taurus dog traits.
Yeah, and she's not afraid to make fun of herself either, which I think speaks to her, like, level of comfort with herself.
Totally agree. There's a self-assuredness there.
Right.
That, I think, comes from that strong sense of self we talked about.
Yeah. Okay, so we've seen how this Taurus dog combo might play out in the lives of these really different people, but let's shift gears for a sec and talk about compatibility. One of the sources had this whole section on best matches for this combination, and I gotta ask, should our listeners be, like, dumping their partners if they're not on this list?
Oh, definitely not. No. These are just fun insights, not a relationship rule book or anything.
Oh, good. So more like interesting food for thought than a reason to, like, run for the hills. Exactly. But it is interesting to consider how different energies might, interact. Like, for example, the source listed Cancer horse as a potentially good match for a Taurus dog.
That's an interesting combo. So Cancers are known for being emotionally deep and nurturing. And horses tend to be more free-spirited, adventurous. So maybe the Taurus dog's, like, need for emotional security would work well with the Cancer's sensitivity, and the horse's energy could bring in some excitement and spontaneity to the mix.
It could be a really nice balance of energies.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another pairing the source mentioned was Taurus dog with Virgo rabbit. Now, Virgos are also an earth sign, so they've got that grounded, practical nature, like Taurus. And rabbits are usually gentle and peace-loving. So wouldn't that be, like, a double dose of stability? Could it be too much of a good thing? Like, would they just get stuck in a rut?
That's a valid question. Yeah, too much of anything can create an imbalance, but it really depends on the individuals and how they, navigate those shared tendencies. Like, maybe the Virgo's attention to detail and the rabbit's desire for harmony would actually complement the Taurus dog's loyalty and protectiveness in a positive way.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a recipe for disaster, just something to be mindful of.
Exactly. Like with any relationship, it's all about open communication and a willingness to compromise.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about some, potentially harmonious combinations, but were there any pairings that seemed
Yeah.
like a recipe for conflict? Any astrological oil and water situations?
Actually, yes, the source pointed to Gemini Dragon as a combo that could be challenging for a Taurus dog.
Oh, interesting. What makes those two clash?
Well, Geminis are known for being really adaptable, communicative, always up for a change of pace,
Yeah.
which could clash with the Taurus dog's desire for, stability and routine.
So you've got that free-flowing, ever-changing energy of Gemini running into the grounded, steady nature of the Taurus dog.
Right. And then you add in the dragons, assertive and sometimes domineering energy, and it could create even more friction.
I can see that. That sounds like a recipe for some fireworks. But again, it all comes down to how individuals choose to navigate those differences, right?
Absolutely. Astrology can give us insights and show us potential areas of growth, but it's not a crystal ball or anything. Ultimately, it's up to each person to create their own path.
Right, right. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Personality traits, strengths, challenges, even compatibility. But I want to bring it back to our listener for a minute. Even if they don't, follow astrology, how can they use this knowledge in their own lives? What's the takeaway?
That's the most important question.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't believe in the Zodiac, the insights about, loyalty, communication styles, potential compatibility issues, all that stuff, it's all relevant to understanding people in general, no matter their birth date.
So it's like having an extra lens to view human behavior through.
Exactly. These systems offer a framework for thinking about personality and motivations, which can be super helpful in navigating relationships and understanding different perspectives.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not about putting people in boxes, but rather having a deeper understanding of what makes them tick.
Precisely.
Okay. Before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. The source mentioned that Taurus dogs often really enjoy home improvement projects.
Yeah.
They like creating a comfortable and functional space for themselves and their loved ones.
Yes, that makes sense. It lines up with their grounded earth sign energy and their desire for stability.
Right, but I'm wondering, could that extend beyond just like the physical realm? Do you think Taurus dogs also have this need to renovate other areas of their lives, maybe their careers, their relationships, or even just like
their own personal growth? That's a really interesting thought. It's not something explicitly mentioned in the sources, but it's definitely plausible. If they thrive on creating order and stability in their physical environment, it makes sense that they might apply that to other parts of their lives too.
So maybe when a Taurus dog feels like things are getting stale, stagnant, they get that urge to tear it all down and rebuild it better.
It's possible. But remember, change can be challenging for them. They need a really good reason to disrupt their status quo.
Right. So maybe the takeaway for our listeners, especially if they know any Taurus dogs, is to be patient with their need for routine and stability, but also be aware of any subtle signs that they might be ready for a renovation in some part of their life. And when that happens, just be there to support them in making those changes in a way that feels, safe and grounded for them.
That's a great point. Yeah. It's all about understanding their need for security, but also encouraging them to embrace growth and evolution.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about the Taurus dog. They're loyal, grounded, practical, and protective, with a love of stability and a talent for creating lasting structures in their lives.
And we've seen how, even if we don't personally believe in astrology, these systems can give us valuable insights into human behavior and motivations.
Totally. A huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring this fascinating combination of astrological energies with us. And remember, whether you're a Taurus dog or you know someone who is, the key is to embrace your strengths, acknowledge your challenges, and never stop learning and growing. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's possible they might hold on to a project at work that's clearly going nowhere or stay in a relationship way too long, past its expiration date.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. But hey, at least on the plus side, if Taurus dog is your friend, you know they're not going to ditch you. The second things get a little rough.
That's for sure. Yeah, that loyalty runs deep.
Okay, so we've got this image now of the Taurus dog. Loyal, reliable, protective, maybe a tad stubborn. But I'm curious, how does this actually, play out in the real world? Do you think we could see these traits reflected in any famous Taurus dogs.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, your research has a whole list of famous people born under this combo. And it's a pretty diverse group, too, which just goes to show that even with these shared astrological influences, there's always room for like individual expression.
Right, of course. So let's take a look. The first one that jumps out at me is Cher. I mean, she's an icon. And she's had this incredible career spanning decades, and she's still going. So is that the Taurus dog energy shining through there?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That staying power, you
Right.
know, the ability to stay relevant and reinvent herself over and over, but still maintain that core sense of self that really speaks to the stability and resilience of the Taurus dog.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem to be easily swayed by,
Yeah.
trends or fads or anything. She just does her own thing.
Right. And think about her loyalty to her fans. Like, she's known for fiercely defending them and advocating for causes that she believes in.
That's true. Okay, this one surprised me. Andre the Giant is on this list. I would not have guessed that.
I know, right? But it's interesting because he really embodies that protector aspect we were talking about, but in a totally different way than, someone like Cher.
Yeah, he was known for his strength, obviously.
Yeah.
And that imposing presence, but also for being gentle and kind.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid to use his strength to protect others, which I think really aligns with that dog energy.
Okay, so maybe the protector side of a Taurus dog. It isn't always about being gentle and nurturing. It can also be a powerful force that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds us that these combos are more like a framework for understanding personality, not a strict blueprint.
Totally. Let's look at one more. Tina Fey. She's obviously incredibly successful and talented.
Yeah.
But she also seems to have this kind of grounded, down-to-earth quality.
She does, yeah. And her career trajectory. It's all built on hard work, consistency, and a clear vision. I think those are all very Taurus dog traits.
And she's not afraid to make fun of herself either, which I think speaks to her level of comfort with herself.
I agree. Yeah, there's a self-assuredness there. I think comes from that. Strong sense of self.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've explored how this Taurus dog combo might play out in the lives of these very different individuals. But let's switch gears a bit and talk about compatibility. One of the sources had a whole section on the best matches for this combination. So I have to ask, should our listeners be like dumping their partners if they're not on this list?
Oh, definitely not. No. These are just for fun, interesting insights, not a relationship rule book.
Okay, good. So more like interesting food for thought than a reason to like.
Panic.
Exactly. But it is interesting to consider how these different energies might interact. For example, the source listed Cancer horse as a potentially strong match for a Taurus dog. That's an interesting combination. Cancers are known for being very emotionally deep and nurturing, and horses tend to be more free-spirited and adventurous.
Okay.
So you could see how the Taurus dog's need for emotional security might blend well with the Cancer sensitivity, and then the horse could bring in a little bit of excitement and spontaneity.
Right. It could be a really nice balance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another pairing they mentioned was Taurus dog with Virgo rabbit.
Now, Virgos are an earth sign too, so they share that grounded, practical nature.
With Taurus, and rabbits are usually gentle and peace-loving. So wouldn't that be like a double dose of stability? Could it be too much of a good thing?
Yeah, potentially. It's like too much of anything can throw things off balance.
Right. So would they just be like stuck?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the, the specific people and how they deal with those shared tendencies, like maybe the Virgo's attention to detail and the rabbit's desire for harmony would actually work well with the Taurus dogs. Loyalty and protectiveness. Interesting. So not necessarily a bad thing, just something to keep in mind.
Exactly. Like with any relationship, open communication is key. And a willingness to compromise,
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about some combinations that could be pretty harmonious, but were there any pairings that seemed more like a recipe for disaster? Any astrological oil and water situations?
Actually, yeah. The source mentioned Gemini dragon. As a combination, that could be tough for a Taurus dog.
Oh, really? What makes them clash?
Well, Geminis are known for being super adaptable, communicative, and always up for a change of pace, which could clash with the Taurus dog's need for stability and routine.
Ah, so you've got that, like free-flowing, ever-changing Gemini energy, bumping up against the more grounded, steady nature of the Taurus dog.
Right, and then add in the dragons.
Yeah.
Assertive and sometimes domineering energy. And yeah, it could definitely create some friction.
Yeah, I could see how that could lead to some fireworks. But
Yeah.
again, I guess it depends on how the individuals
Yeah.
choose to handle those differences, right?
Absolutely. Astrology can offer insights and highlight potential areas for growth. But it's not destiny, you know? Ultimately, we all create our own paths.
Right, right. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Personality traits, strengths and weaknesses, compatibility. But I want to bring it back to our listener for a second. Even if they're not, like, super into astrology, how can they actually use this knowledge? What's the takeaway?
That's the most important question. Because even if you don't believe in the zodiac, the insights about things like loyalty, communication styles, potential compatibility issues, these are all relevant to understanding people in general, regardless of their birth date.
So it's like a different way of looking at human behavior.
Exactly. It gives you a framework for understanding personality and motivation, which can be really helpful for navigating relationships and understanding different perspectives.
That makes sense. It's not about, like, putting people in boxes, but about getting a better understanding of what makes them tick.
The place.
Okay, before we wrap up, there's one last thing. The source mentioned that Taurus dogs tend to really enjoy home improvement projects, like they get satisfaction from creating a comfortable and functional space.
Yeah, that makes sense. It aligns with that grounded earth sign energy and their desire for stability.
Right, but I was wondering if that could also extend beyond just like their physical space. You know? Do you think Taurus dogs also have this, like this need to renovate other areas of their lives, like their careers or relationships?
That's interesting. I mean, it wasn't mentioned in the sources specifically, but it's definitely a possibility. You know, if they enjoy creating order and stability in their environment, it makes sense that they might apply that to other parts of their lives too.
Yeah. So maybe when a Taurus dog feels like things are getting stale or stagnant, they get this urge to, like, shake things up.
Maybe. But remember, change can be hard for them. They need a really good reason to disrupt their routine.
Right, that makes sense. So maybe the takeaway here, especially for anyone who knows a Taurus dog, is to be patient with that need for routine and stability, but also be aware of any signs that they might be ready for a change.
Yeah, like they might not always come right out and say it.
Right.
So watch for those subtle cues.
And then if they are ready for a change, just be there to support them in a way that feels safe and grounded for them.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about balancing that need for security with encouraging them to grow.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything. There is to know about the Taurus dog. They're loyal, grounded, practical, protective, with a love of stability and a knack for building lasting structures in their lives.
And we've learned that even if you're not into astrology, it can still offer some valuable insights into how people think and behave.
Absolutely. Huge thanks to everyone for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring this fascinating combination with us. Real history. Whether you're a Taurus dog yourself or you know someone who is, the key is to embrace your strengths, acknowledge those challenges, and never stop learning and growing. Thanks for listening, everybody.